By doing this, though, do you feel the relief of what it's like not to have that huge financial burden?
Yeah, it is a huge relief. Like I said, when I listed it, I breathed a huge sigh of relief, and now I sit when I'm paying my bills, and I just think, wow, this is so much easier, you know, to not write that big check for that utility bill every month. It was a huge burden, and every time property tax time came around, I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, if I keep doing this,
$4,000 a crack.
Yeah.
Because you were in a newer big house, and what was interesting is in the area that you were at, because of the time frame you were built. I remember when we were doing the comps, everything around you was either a short pay or a foreclosure. There were no standard sales.
There were no standard sales.
So you were in basically a declining market.
Yeah.
Being in escrow, I know that was a little bit of a challenge for you.
It was.
Because this was not a fun thing for you to do. No. And the buyers were extremely excited and happy and very enthusiastic.
Yeah, they loved my house. And they wanted to be there all the time to measure and plot their furniture arrangements, and I wanted to hurt them.
Right. Well, and you were grieving.
I was grieving, and they didn't understand. They needed to let me live in my house until I had to go.
And what advice would you give for somebody that's looking to buy a short sale on what would be proper etiquette to deal with a seller that's going through this? Because a lot of times the people in a short sale don't want to leave.
Yeah, you have to respect their space and understand that 9 times out of 10, it's not a situation where they're happy to be selling you their house. I was happy. I was happy that these people loved my house as much as I did.
Absolutely.
It made me feel good because I loved that house. I did. But my friend says, you got to let it go. It's just sticks and stucco. No, it was more. It represented my family.
Correct.
And my family had been broken. So you have to, I think as a buyer, you need to take a step back and consider the circumstances of the seller and put yourself in their shoes and think about how you would feel walking away from a house that you loved.
Right.
That it was our life.
Right.
And you need to respect their space and respect the time and respect what they have and understand that until escrow closes, it's still their house.
Correct. And maybe just tone down the enthusiasm.
Tone down your enthusiasm. It's wonderful to want to go in and measure for paint and carpet and all those things, but appreciate the fact that the person who's living there isn't really happy about leaving.
Good point.
And needs to have their space. I needed to have my time with my house. I was grieving. It was almost like losing my husband again, really. It was that emotional. And for my son too, it was pretty emotional for him. And he got really annoyed with them.
Sure.
He was, what are those people doing here again? Why are they here all the time?
What advice would you have for somebody that's on the verge of thinking, should I do a short pay? What could you do to maybe help them so they didn't maybe spend so much time in agony over the decision?
What made the decision for me was to sit down and do that balance sheet and look at my monthly expenses versus what I had to meet those obligations. And I'm kind of a bottom line person. Even though I'm emotional, I looked at the bottom line and I knew that it just wasn't going to work. And it was simply a matter of time. So my best advice is to put it on paper. You have to see it on paper. It's astounding when you actually look at it right there in black and white. It takes all of that doubt away. It does for me. That was the best thing I could do. And then I talked to other people who had experienced the short sale process, one in particular being my stepsister. They successfully sold their home on a short sale, and then talking to a realtor.
Very
and
good.
when I spoke with you, you made it seem like, well, It's not easy, but it can be done. And I think that you can do it. I had a really high credit score. I had no income and no job, and people are offering me credit all over the place. And I was concerned that when I stopped making that mortgage payment, my credit would basically just
Tank.
I kept my credit cards current. I didn't run up a lot of other debt. I was very careful not to spend a lot of money because, you know, your lender is looking at your credit as well.
Sure.
And they're looking at your monthly expenditures, and you're accountable to them for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
They're keeping a close eye on you, and so I stopped spending money. I kept my credit cards current, and I didn't use them. I used them as little as possible. I walked away with a fairly decent credit score.
So when you started, if you don't mind sharing, your credit was what, up in the 8s?
My credit was over 800.
Wow.
It was 820 something.
Okay, and then after the short pay?
After the short pay, it was in the 7s.
That's amazing.
It was still in the 7s. So when I went to rent a place, I filled out the credit application, and I was upfront and honest with the property manager. You know, I told her, I said, you know, my credit is probably going to be bad because I just sold my house on a short sale and I stopped making my mortgage payment. But she ran a credit check on me, and she came back to me and she said, your credit's not that bad.
Nice.
It's still in the 7s, so I was able to rent a place, and a huge burden has been lifted.
And that's really the message that we want to get out, is that the people that really sincerely need to get out because they are in a position that is overwhelm them.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where they're draining their bank accounts or they're
Right.
borrowing money from people.
Well, that makes no sense. You're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, and
Correct.
that makes no sense. And it didn't work for me. I had nobody to borrow money from anyway.
Which is
So
probably a fortunate
it was
thing.
probably a good thing because I really didn't want to go into any more debt. I had enough. You cannot judge yourself for things beyond your control.
Thank you, because that's an important message. And that message to the people listening to this, I really hope it hits home and triggers something in them to just forgive themselves and not judge.
Yeah.
Because I think the judgment is what keeps us trapped in situations that are truly not good for us.